Well, welcome to the 700 Club. In a final farewell today, the family of Billy Graham and the country are honoring the man known as America's pastor. They're calling it his last crusade.
Graham and his family had been planning for this day for years as his last opportunity to spread the gospel. John Jessup brings us this look at Billy Graham's funeral from Charlotte, North Carolina.
After a week of reflecting in his home state of North Carolina and the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, family, friends, and fellow ministers of the gospel are in Charlotte to say goodbye to the Reverend Billy Graham. On the grounds of his library, more than 2,000 guests will honor Graham in a service he helped plan himself, featuring songs from Michael W. Smith and the Gaither Vocal Band, tributes from his family, and a sermon from his son, Franklin.
Use us, O God, as you used evangelist Billy Graham.
Often called counselor to the presidents, Billy Graham was also a simple man with a family left to mourn his death.
How are you all holding up?
Tired and you know, mentally and physically exhausted, or getting to that point. But it's also been mixed in with celebrating Daddy Bill's life.
You keep saying Daddy Bill.
Yeah.
So, one, can you tell us how he got that name?
I have no idea. I just know Daddy Bill and Tete. That was what we call my grandmother.
As a teenager, Chivijan says he learned about faith and humility when he found his grandfather alone in a New Orleans hotel room after praying at a political convention.
I knocked on the door, and sure enough, Daddy Bill opens the door. He's in his pajamas. And I never will forget looking out of the corner of my eye on his bed, and there you could tell he had been sitting, and his Bible was open.
He says that's just who his grandfather really was.
It was a glimpse of the authentic Billy Graham, that when left alone, if he had the choice of spending time with Jesus or going out and spending time with the influential politicians, he chose Jesus. And that memory has always stuck to me, because I left that night feeling a bit convicted, but remember leaving going, man, that's the real deal. Lord, help me to know and love you in that way.
It's a quality also noted by scholars.
That's one thing that makes him distinctive, that he wasn't in it for himself, that he was in it to build Christ's kingdom.
People are remembering Billy Graham's legacy not just here in America, but across the globe. And even though he had worldwide impact, his ministry was always rooted in the local church.
He did contribute to, even create, modern evangelical Christianity in the U.S. and contributed to this global Christian movement.
He did it using media to promote the gospel, while he also promoted others like Pastor Greg Laurie.
I really got to know the man Billy Graham. And you know, people ask, well, what was he like? Well, he was the same man privately that he was publicly.
Pastor Laurie believes even as people say farewell and celebrate his homegoing, every Christian believer can honor the legacy of the greatest evangelist of our time.
To me, the greatest tribute we could pay to Billy Graham is do what Billy did. What did Billy do? Billy proclaimed the gospel. That's the greatest tribute we could pay to a man who dedicated his entire life to doing just that.
John Jessup, CBN News, reporting in Charlotte, North Carolina.
I think it's time to remember what he said about his own death. He said, if you ever hear a report that Billy Graham is dead, well, don't you believe it. All he's done is change his address. And we say farewell today to America's pastor, but look forward to that day where once again we will see him again in heaven. Well, in other news, the United States has responded to Vladimir Putin's latest nuclear threat. Wendy Griffith has that story from the CBN Newsroom. Wendy?
Gordon, the United States fired back quickly after Russian President Putin unveiled a new array of nuclear weapons that he claims are invincible. National security correspondent Eric Rosales tells us about the U.S. warning to Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country has developed a series of nuclear weapon systems, including a new supersonic cruise missile capable of overcoming NATO defense systems. Putin used his State of the Nation address to warn that any attack on Russian allies would constitute an attack on Russia itself. Among the new weapons, underwater nuclear drones, a supersonic weapon, and a laser. The United States was quick to respond. First, the Pentagon. Top military officials say the United States has nothing to worry about.
We're not surprised by the statements, and the American people should rest assured that we are fully prepared.
Putin said Russia developed the weapons due to the U.S. withdrawal from the 1972 anti-ballistic missile treaty signed with the Soviet Union. U.S. defense officials say not so fast.
Our missile defense has never been about them. We need to ensure we have a credible nuclear deterrent, and we are confident that we're prepared to do, and we're prepared to defend this nation no matter what.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said President Trump understands the threats facing the United States and our allies.
President Putin has confirmed what the United States government has known all along, which Russia has denied. Russia has been developing destabilizing weapons systems for over a decade in direct violations of its treaty obligations.
Sanders adds the new defense budget of $700 billion will ensure the U.S. military will be stronger than ever.
As the president's nuclear posture review made clear, America is moving forward to modernize our nuclear arsenal and ensure our capabilities are unmatched.
Both Russia and the United States are part of a treaty to reduce the number of strategic nuclear warheads both countries have by this year. However, as tensions continue to grow, that commitment looks increasingly uncertain. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Eric. Well, many Americans have been very concerned that their taxes are being used to reward Palestinian terrorists. Our Jennifer Wishon brings us this report on what's being done in Washington to put a stop to it.
Today, hard-earned American tax dollars are being used indirectly to pay Palestinian terrorists to murder Jews and others in Israel. Here in Washington, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are working to put a stop to it. The Taylor-Force Act cuts U.S. funding for the Palestinian Authority unless it ends its practice of pay to slay. That is, payments to terrorists and their families after a successful attack on innocent people. It's named for Taylor Force, an American combat veteran murdered while visiting Israel. After Force was brutally stabbed to death, the PA praised his killer and made sure his family is set for life. The PA has tens of thousands on its pay-to-slay payroll to the tune of millions, and the U.S. is the PA's biggest benefactor. It's a chilling practice that American lawmakers say must stop.
It bothers me greatly that the Palestinian Authority would be paying its young people to become terrorists. So you can see this bill go forward. Having said that, I stand ready to work with the Palestinians. I would like to give them more assistance, but Taylor Force has to be dealt with as a precondition for me.
The Taylor-Force Act has already passed the House. The Senate was expected to take it up this week. That didn't happen, and if they don't take it up soon, it may simply be rolled into the comprehensive spending bill they'll vote on the end of this month. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Gordon, it's hard to imagine there'd be any delay in the Senate or House to get this passed.
Well, I'm actually stunned they didn't take it up this week. This is something that needs to be done immediately in order to stop our taxpayer money going into terrorism. It's an absolute incentive, and it's not a little bit of money. It's $350 million a year going to pay the families of terrorists. And there's a point score, if you will. You get paid more money, the more devastation you, all the havoc you create in Israel. It's absolutely incredible to me that our Foreign Service, our administration, going back decades, this isn't something new they've done. And I'm grateful for the Republicans in the House and the Senate and this administration for unmasking this, but we need to stop it, and we need to stop it now. If you're upset about this like me, just go to cbnnews.com. You can call us also, 1-800-700-7000. Say that I want to be a part of this. I want to stop our tax dollars going to terrorism. I want to end Pay for Slay. We have a online petition that you can sign. We've already submitted over 25,000 signatures to the Senate last December when we first started lobbying for let's take this bill up and take it up quickly. Now we're all the way into March and they still haven't had an up and down vote. I don't want this rolled into some kind of spending bill. We need to know where senators stand on our tax dollars going to pay for terrorism. So sign the petition. Let's get involved. 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbnnews.com.